This is my first case after graduating from the police academy. At first, it was just a normal suicide. But when I lifted the veil and saw the lurking ghost, a chill ran down my spine. Master once told me that as police officers, we should only focus on the truth, not dig deeper, otherwise we will hurt others and ourselves. He would never lie to me. Chapter 1. The deceased was a housewife. Her fall was recorded by many cameras in the area. At that time, her husband and son were not at home, and no strangers appeared. According to the surveillance video and the investigation of the scene, the case was basically determined to be a suicide. However, through investigation, I learned that the deceased's family lived a very happy and fulfilling life. Her husband was the chief physician of 3 major hospitals in the area, and her son was studying at a key school, with top grades. Her parents were still alive and living nearby. This seemed like an ideal family that many people admired. A suicide in such a happy family made us suspect something mysterious, so, even though the surveillance showed that it was a suicide, we still decided to be more careful, to find out any details that might have been overlooked. Was there anything that made the deceased leave behind young children and elderly parents and choose to end his life? I couldn't help but think about families that seemed perfect but actually had painful secrets. I prepared for a big and complicated case. But then, the cause was confirmed: the deceased had been suffering from depression for the past 4 to 5 years. Although I was a little disappointed, I still felt relieved. Depression is really miserable. Even though I lived in a happy family, no one knew the inner thoughts of the deceased. After reviewing the medical records and talking to the doctor, we stopped there, respecting the family's privacy. As a new police officer, I took on some non-professional tasks such as assisting the family with the death certificate and cremation procedures. When the deceased's husband invited me to attend the farewell ceremony, although I was not very happy, I agreed because of family sentiment. At the ceremony, I noticed that the deceased's husband seemed to get along very well with his wife's relatives. Her parents even considered him their main support. However, I felt that something was wrong, but I couldn't clearly point it out. After the ceremony, I waited for a taxi at the funeral home gate. When I was about to get off the bus and pay, I suddenly found a note stuffed in my pocket. Nha Lan was killed by Truong Lan, who was having an affair. Nha Lan was the deceased, and Truong Lan was her husband. This note must have been stuffed in when I was at the funeral home, because I didn't see it this morning. I decided to go back to see if there was any camera that recorded this moment. While retrieving the surveillance footage, I happened to meet Truong Gia, who was holding the urn and preparing to leave. Seeing him leave alone, I suddenly realized that something was wrong. Parents who lost their daughter, whether the son-in-law was at fault or not, could not completely forgive, let alone their daughter had committed suicide. They should have been a little cold, but here, they were too harmonious. Furthermore, when the ashes were taken away, the whole family should have been there to see them off. Finally, I brought the note back to report to the team. We verified the footage at the funeral home gate and found that a woman wearing sunglasses and a bucket hat had slipped a note into my pocket while I was waiting for the car. But when I looked through the surveillance footage, I found that the woman had not attended the farewell ceremony. She seemed to have been waiting for me, and after I left the funeral home, she also left. She did not take a car but walked there and came back the other way, clearly wanting to hide her identity. After questioning the deceased's husband, parents, relatives, and friends, all confirmed that they did not know this woman. There has been no significant progress on our side, but we have received rumors that the deceased's husband had an affair. About 5 or 6 years ago, there were rumors that he had an affair, and the deceased even had to be hospitalized for treatment, which reminded many people of this story. Chapter 2. It is said that Nha Lan and her husband were once colleagues. Nha Nam was a doctor and Nha Lan was a nurse. It was a love affair between a doctor and a nurse, a very common combination, and it was also arranged by Nha Lan's father. At that time, Nha Lan's father worked as an ambulance driver in the hospital and was very fond of Dr. Nha Nam, a young and talented person. Although he came from a poor family, Nha Nam managed to enter a prestigious university on his own, then got a doctorate and worked at a top hospital. Nha Lan's father did not care about financial conditions. That year, he happened to become rich and had financial freedom. He only had one daughter, so he wanted to find a good husband for her. And so Dr. Hao Nam entered Nha Lan's life. His daughter was just a nurse, but had a lovely appearance, and was from a big city. Combined with the family's financial conditions, she was also a good match for the doctor. The story went as Nha Lan's father wished. The two soon entered the wedding hall, got married and had children. Nha Lan decided to quit her job to wholeheartedly take care of her family. Gradually, Dr. Hao Nam's career developed, and Nha Lan's family was also stable. But since when did this relationship crack to the point of leading to death? This story seems familiar. Is it because when a man achieves success, he wants to abandon his wife who has accompanied him, but doesn't dare to do so, which leads to murder? I shook my head vigorously, trying to dispel that crazy thought. If Zhang Haonan was really a villain, he couldn't be so close to Yalan's family. At the farewell ceremony, everyone could see the closeness between him and his wife's parents. If it was just an act, could he have pretended for more than a decade? The two had been married for 14 years. Moreover, with his current position and financial condition, Dr. Haonan didn't need to depend on his wife's family anymore. But what if someone could pretend for a dozen years? I couldn't help but shiver. The important thing right now was to find the person who had stuffed that piece of paper into my pocket. One day, while doing chores, I happened to see Truong Lan, the son of the deceased, arguing with a man with a tattoo of flowers and leaves on his arm by the roadside. I quickly walked over, and both of them stopped when they saw me. Before I could ask, Truong Lan said, "He threw dirty water on me." Sure enough, his pants were covered in mud and water. A Mercedes stopped nearby. The man quickly apologized and said he would compensate. Truong Lan glanced at the man, then ignored him and angrily walked away. I had met Truong Lan a few times before and had the impression that he was a quiet and shy child. Seeing him standing here alone, quite far from home, I was a bit worried, so I approached him and offered to take him home. When he got in the car, I was rearranging the photos in the glove compartment when he suddenly saw one and seemed to realize something. It was a photo taken from the surveillance camera of the woman who had put the paper in my pocket. After a moment of hesitation, Truong Lan said he seemed to have met this person before. He thought it was his mother's friend, but he couldn't remember who it was. On the way back, he told me to drop him off, saying that he had an extra class. Suddenly a thought flashed through my mind, maybe that woman didn't necessarily have to be a relative or a close friend. Although Nha Lan was just a housewife and had few social relationships, in addition to her relatives and friends, she also had a group of other acquaintances, people she met through her daily activities. Indeed, I finally found out that the woman was Nha Lan's beauty consultant. When questioned, she admitted to putting the paper in my pocket. But when asked for evidence, she said it was just a guess, because there was no evidence, so she did it secretly. She speculated because Nha Lan had complained that her husband was indifferent, and that they had not been close for many years. She also thought that Nha Lan was not someone with the personality to commit suicide. Although this consultant clearly seemed to love Nha Lan, there was still something about her that made me deeply suspicious. Chapter 3. One day, Nha Lan's beauty consultant Taoan called me and swore that she had found evidence that Truong Hao Nam had murdered Nha Lan. At this time, Nha Lan's suicide case had officially closed. Thinking about how I had bothered the investigation team because of my rashness, and also the criticisms of my colleagues that I was immature, unstable, and easily led, I really didn't want to talk to her. But my curiosity was aroused by her. Feeling like there were insects gnawing at me, I couldn't stand it anymore and decided to go see her to see what she was up to. This time she went straight to the point, opened her laptop and showed me a photo. She said that Nha Lan had an affair and bought a large amount of insurance for Truong Hao Nam. She was sure that Nha Lan wanted to kill her husband to get the insurance money, but the plan was discovered by Truong Hao Nam first, and in the end she was killed. No matter how you look at it, this is just a photo of the beauty center that Nha Lan often goes to, which is where Taoan works. Before I could get angry, Taoan enlarged the photo and pointed to the lower right corner and said, "Look, isn't this Nha Lan?" Before I could get angry, Taoan enlarged the photo and pointed to the lower right corner and said, "Look, isn't this Nha Lan?" sure enough, I saw a man and a woman under the shade of a tree in the corner of the photo. They looked quite intimate, but the distance was too far to see their faces clearly. Just based on this photo, it was not possible to confirm that it was Nha Lan. Looking at the jacket and hairstyle, I'm sure it's Nha Lan. Truong added, explaining that the photo was taken 3 months ago when the company was filming a promotional video, and she accidentally discovered it. She also swore that women are very conscious about their appearance. Nha Lan, despite having a cold relationship with her husband, often gets beauty treatments, even breast and butt augmentation. Isn't it because she has a lover? I sneered, but before I could refute, Truong reminded me that she had mentioned insurance to Nha Lan. Surprisingly, Nha Lan seemed knowledgeable and gave her many suggestions. In the end, she decided to buy insurance. I waited for her to continue, but she stopped, looking at me with an expectant gaze as if to say, "See, I didn't lie to you. Is that all? You called me here just to talk about this?" I couldn't help but feel angry, feeling like I was deceived once again. "Comrade Truong, I warn you, if you keep lying about the case, you will be held legally responsible." "What lie about the case?" "These things. Aren't they obvious?" It's obvious that Nha Lan wanted to kill her husband to get the insurance money, but was discovered by Truong Gia and killed instead. I sneered, truly admiring her imagination. I didn't want to pay attention to her anymore, transferred the photo to my phone and left. Truong still shouted behind me, "If you don't believe me, just check the insurance contract." Of course I wanted to investigate. This case made me feel like there was a layer of fog covering my eyes, and I wanted to dispel it. The photo had been professionally processed, there was a 95% chance that it was Nha Lan. However, just based on a photo, it was not possible to conclude that Nha Lan had an affair, let alone that she intended to murder her husband. After further investigation, I found out that Nha Lan actually bought many insurance policies for Hao Nam, totaling more than 30 million yuan, and the beneficiaries were all Nha Lan. What surprised me more was Nha Lan's financial situation. She came from a well-off family, but she had many bad debt records, and even mortgaged the apartment her family was living in. Nha Lan had a gambling habit 5 to 6 years ago. Not only did she accumulate a lot of debt, but she also neglected her family, causing the relationship between husband and wife to become increasingly cold. Her parents tried to cover up her financial gap, but Nha Lan still did not give up this bad habit, so they gradually became disappointed and turned their feelings to their son-in-law. It is no surprise that Nha Lan's parents were close to their son-in-law. Perhaps her death brought them some relief, as they no longer had to worry about being found out by creditors. From this perspective, Truong's theory of planning to kill her husband and being discovered by her husband, and finally being killed in return, seems reasonable. But when you consider it carefully, it seems unreasonable. Hao Nam has now succeeded, his status with Nha Lan has completely changed. If he wants to solve it, he only needs to divorce. Why does he need to kill someone? Master said that, as police officers, we should only look at the essence of the case and not dig deeper, otherwise we will hurt others and ourselves. The investigation has reached a dead end, not only failing to prove that Nha Lan was killed, but also creating a lot of other troubles. Master warned me not to indulge in the case anymore, so I had to force myself to let go. Chapter 4. Unexpectedly, half a year later, our arrest of a stalker brought this suicide case to the forefront. This stalker was a neighbor in the same neighborhood as Nha Lan. He installed a telescope and a high-resolution camera at home, and regularly monitored the neighbors. Nha Lan was one of his surveillance targets. He found many videos and photos of Nha Lan on his computer. Nha Lan jumped from the master bedroom. In all the videos and photos of the master bedroom, you can see a bench like a balance beam placed between the balcony and the bed. This is where she often practiced yoga. The latest photo was taken the day before the incident. The bench was still in place. But I remember that on the day of the incident, there was no bench at the scene. I flipped through the files and was certain that at the time of the incident, there was no bench in the master bedroom. Not only that, the bed in the master bedroom was also placed in a different position than the day before. The bed had been moved at least half a meter towards the balcony. Suddenly, I felt like an electric current had run through my head and a bold idea came to mind. Nha Lan had a habit of taking a nap from 2 to 3 in the afternoon until 5 or 6 in the afternoon. She often practiced yoga on the sofa for a while. The height of the sofa and the balcony railing were similar. If someone knew about her habit and deliberately removed the sofa, the distance between the bed and the balcony would be narrowed, and if it was dark, Nha Lan might mistake the balcony railing for the sofa, causing a fall from a height. If it was filmed from a distance, it would seem that she had jumped to her death. In the interrogation room, Hao Nam admitted that he had moved the sofa because he was worried that Nha Lan would have an accident while practicing yoga, so he wanted to prevent an accident from happening. He argued that although their marriage might not have been out of love, they had lived together for many years and had a family relationship. Murder was impossible. He had no motive for murder. The explanation sounded reasonable, and he also did not admit to moving the bed. No, you have a motive for murder. I placed the paternity test report on the table in front of him. His expression changed from doubt to surprise, then quickly to shock. He grabbed the report, tore it to pieces, threw it in my face, and shouted, "I don't believe it. This is fake. I will sue you." We restrained him and asked him to calm down, but it took a long time for him to gradually calm down, his whole body trembling, sometimes crying, sometimes laughing like crazy. This was not the reaction I expected. If a husband discovers that the child he has raised for more than 10 years is not his biological child, or that the marriage was originally a lie, it could be the motive for killing his wife. But this would only happen if Hao Nam already knew the truth. Of course, it is also possible that he is pretending. If he is just pretending, his acting ability is truly amazing, especially in such an unexpected situation. After discovering the relationship between Nha Lan and Pho Hang, I continued to investigate and found that, at least twice in the month before Nha Lan fell from the building, she and Pho Hang had gone to pick up Truong Lan's son after school. How strong must a woman be to bring her lover to see her son? I asked the head nurse at Nha Lan's workplace. According to her, Nha Lan seemed to have had a boyfriend before marrying Dr. Truong. Nha Lan was very beautiful and enthusiastic at that time. Even though she had a boyfriend, she was still pursued by many people. Later, she and her boyfriend broke up for unknown reasons, which made her depressed for a while, and then she came to Dr. Truong. Nha Lan's ex-boyfriend at that time was Phu Heng. Looking at the time, I realized that Nha Lan and Hao Nam got pregnant right after getting married. Zhang Lan is now 14 years old, and Phu Heng had left the city about 18 years ago, and then returned 3 years later. In other words, when Phu Heng left, Nha Lan fell into Hao Nam's arms. Then Phu Heng returned to the city before Nha Lan got married. Two of Phu Heng's friends confirmed that on Nha Lan's wedding day, Phu Heng was drunk and passed out, and they were the ones who sent him to the hospital. What if Zhang Lan was Phu Heng's son? This explained why Nha Lan had brought Phu Heng to see Zhang Lan many times. I secretly collected biological samples from Zhang Lan and Phu Heng. The DNA results confirmed my prediction. Not only Nha Lan and Pho Heng know about this truth, but Truong Lan also knows, but it seems he does not accept this truth and does not want others to know.